My wife said she was at a procurement conference in Denver. An unknown number sent me a video of her accepting another man's proposal on a beach. I typed one word, smile, and put my phone face down. An hour later, Claire had called me 77 times. I was eating a turkey sandwich at my desk on a Wednesday afternoon, reviewing a loss exposure memo that had to be out by 4 when the video arrived. Unknown number. No text above it. No explanation. Just a thumbnail of pale sand, gray-blue water, and a woman in a white dress standing with both hands over her mouth. 22 seconds. I pressed play. My wife, Claire, was on a beach I had never been to, wearing a champagne linen dress I had never seen hanging in our closet. In front of her, a man in rolled-up sleeves was down on one knee, holding an open ring box. His back was mostly to the camera, but I could see enough. Broad shoulders, expensive watch, dark hair moving in the wind. The kind of man who looked like he had never been surprised by a restaurant bill in his life. Claire laughed first. That was what I noticed before anything else. Not the ring, not the water, not the fact that my wife was supposed to be in Denver at the Western Procurement Leadership Forum, sitting under fluorescent lights in some hotel ballroom, while people discussed vendor consolidation and freight volatility. I noticed the laugh. It was open and unguarded, the kind of laugh people give when they think the moment belongs entirely to them. Then she started crying. She nodded before he even finished whatever he was saying. He stood, slid the ring onto her finger, and she wrapped both arms around his neck like she had been waiting for that exact version of her life to begin. There was wind in the audio, a gull somewhere close to the person filming. The footage shook slightly, shot from behind a dune or a beach chair by someone who had either stumbled into something ugly or had been waiting for me to see it. I watched it again. Then a third time. Then a fourth. By the fifth, I was no longer watching like a husband. I was watching like a man trained to read exposure. Angle of light, direction of shadows, color of the water, the line of the shoreline, the bracelet on her right wrist, the one she had told me she bought in Austin on a work trip, the way her left hand trembled when he touched the ring. 22 seconds, and 7 years of marriage rearranged itself into evidence. I opened Claire's message thread. There were normal things above the empty box. A photo of Milo sleeping upside down on the couch. A reminder from her to pick up dishwasher tablets. My own message from the night before, safe flight. Call when you land. She had written back, made it. Exhausted. Denver is freezing. I stared at that sentence for a moment. Then I typed one word. Smile. No punctuation. No explanation. Nothing she could answer cleanly. Nothing she could forward to someone and make me look unstable. Just enough to tell her I had seen something and not enough to tell her what I was going to do with it. I put the phone face down on my desk. My hands were steady. I noticed that because some distant part of me had expected them not to be. Then I finished the memo, changed 2 lines in the executive summary, attached the final document, and sent it at 3:52 p.m. 8 minutes before deadline. That mattered to me. My name is Nathan Mercer. I am 38 years old, and I had been married to Claire Mercer for 7 years when that video landed on my phone. We met at a hospital fundraiser in Charlotte, the kind of event where everyone wore name tags and pretended not to check the silent auction table too often. Claire was there representing a logistics tech company that had donated software to the hospital network. I was there because my firm insured half the vendors in the room, and my boss believed charity events were just networking with better lighting. Claire found me standing near a terrible landscape painting, trying to calculate how long I had to stay before leaving would be socially acceptable. That painting looks like it has a deductible, she said. I laughed harder than the joke deserved, and she noticed. That was one of the first things I liked about her. Claire noticed things. She noticed when a room was bored. She noticed when a person needed rescuing from a conversation. She noticed how to make people feel selected. I worked in corporate risk strategy, building exposure models for companies that like to pretend nothing bad could happen until I showed them the numbers. Claire worked in client partnerships, which meant she spent her life convincing executives that complicated systems could be made simple if they trusted the right person. We both understood presentation. We both understood timing. We both understood that a clean narrative could make people feel safer than the truth. That should have warned me. We bought a house in Charlotte 3 years into the marriage, in a neighborhood with old trees, narrow driveways, and neighbors who knew exactly when you forgot to bring your trash cans in. We renovated it slowly because neither of us came from money and because doing things slowly had once felt like proof we were building something real. The kitchen took the longest. We argued about the backsplash for 3 months, not badly, just persistently. I wanted blue-gray tile. Claire said it made the room feel cold. We settled on white because marriage, I had believed, was partly the art of letting a room become something both people could live in. We had 2 dogs. Ranger, a golden retriever Claire brought home after seeing him at an adoption event and declaring him emotionally overqualified. Milo, a narrow-faced rescue mutt I found on the side of a county road during a site visit and took home for one night, which became forever. They slept at the foot of our bed. Ranger stretched sideways like he paid the mortgage. Milo curled into the smallest possible circle. The marriage had seemed good. I can't honestly say it was good anymore, because the video took away my ability to read it neutrally. But I had believed it was good. I had believed in the house, the dogs, the coffee she made too strong, the hand she put on my shoulder when passing behind my chair. After the video, every one of those memories became evidence. I had noticed things. I want to be clear about that because the version where I was completely blindsided is easier to tell, but it is not true. I had noticed things, and I had explained them away one at a time, which is different from not seeing them. The gym was first. Claire had always been active in the general adult way people are active when they own good running shoes and occasionally remember to use them. Then, about 14 months before the video, the 5:45 a.m. workout started. Every weekday. No exceptions. Her alarm would go off in the dark, and she would slide out of bed carefully, trying not to wake me, which of course woke me every time. When I asked, she said her company had started a wellness challenge. Steps, strength goals, biometric screenings, the usual corporate language that makes exercise sound like a compliance requirement. It sounded plausible. Claire worked for the kind of company that would absolutely turn lunges into a spreadsheet. So I filed it as complete. The clothes came next. Not dramatic things. Not red dresses or expensive heels appearing out of nowhere. Claire was smarter than that. It was smaller. A soft green blouse I had not seen before. A pair of linen pants folded on the chair in our bedroom. New sandals, still too clean on the soles. A white dress hanging under a garment bag at the back of the closet that she said was for client dinners somewhere warm. I asked about the blouse once. Gift card from the team, she said, not looking up from her laptop. I accepted that because asking a second question would have made me feel like a man I did not want to become. Suspicious. Small. Inventorying my wife's closet like a security audit. The tan was harder to explain. She came home from what she said was a Denver conference with color across her shoulders and collarbone, even in golden in a way that did not come from hotel lobbies or conference breakout sessions. I remember standing in the bathroom doorway while she brushed her teeth, noticing the line where her watch had been. Denver got sunny? I asked. Lunch outside, she said through toothpaste foam. Altitude sun is brutal. That was enough. Or I made it enough. The phone changed last, or maybe I only noticed it last because the phone is the thing people are allowed to be private about until privacy starts acting like architecture. Face down at dinner, angled away on the couch, taken upstairs to charge instead of left on the kitchen counter like it used to be. Once, it buzzed while she was in the shower, and I saw the screen light up with no preview, just a notification from WA. Work account, she said later when I asked casually. I nodded. I had noticed the first letters. I had noticed the locked screen. I had noticed that her work trips had started to cluster around Thursdays and Fridays, giving her weekends that appeared inside my life as delayed flights and client dinners that ran long. But I trusted her. That sentence is simple and humiliating in a way I still have trouble sitting with. I trusted her, so every sign arrived as weather instead of climate. One early morning, one new shirt, one tan, one guarded phone, one conference that ran long. The video made the forecast. Within an hour of my text, Claire had called 77 times. I did not answer one of them. The first calls came fast, stacked so close together my phone barely had time to stop vibrating before it started again. Then the messages began arriving in clusters, each one showing me a different version of the woman trying to get back inside the room before I locked the door. The first wave was urgency. Nathan, pick up. Please pick up. I need to talk to you right now. This is not a text conversation. The second wave was reframing. It's not what it looks like. You don't understand what you saw. Please don't make decisions from one video. There is context. There is context. That one almost made me laugh, but nothing came out. Context is useful when a receipt is missing a vendor code or a claim file has an incomplete timeline. Context has less room to work when your wife is standing barefoot on a beach letting another man put a ring on her hand. The third wave was partial confession, the kind people offer when they know denial is no longer available, but still believe they can manage the perimeter. It's been complicated. I never meant for it to get this far. I was going to tell you. I'm coming home tonight. That was the first useful sentence. Coming home tonight meant she was not in Denver. It meant whatever flight she was on, whatever airport she was moving through, whatever story she had been using, had collapsed quickly enough that she needed to get physically in front of me before I had time to become dangerous. The fourth wave was grief. I love you. I have always loved you. Please don't hate me. Please don't do anything until we talk. I read every message as it arrived. Not because they comforted me. They didn't. Not because I was looking for an apology. I wasn't ready to want one. I read them because panic is information, and Claire had always been controlled enough that panic from her was almost diagnostic. She did not ask what video. She did not ask who sent it. She did not ask what I knew. That told me more than the words did. I took Ranger and Milo for a walk because the house had started to feel too small for my body. Claire was presumably somewhere between a beach and an airport, calling me from gates or rental car shuttles or whatever version of emergency logistics adultery creates. I clipped the leashes onto the dogs and left my phone face down on the kitchen counter. I gave myself 20 minutes. That was not bravery. It was containment. 20 minutes to feel the humiliation of being the husband in someone else's beach video. 20 minutes to understand that a stranger had seen enough of my marriage to decide I deserved evidence. 20 minutes to run the inventory my brain had already started building without permission. The early workouts, the guarded phone, the new clothes, the work trips, the way Claire had started saying conference with the smoothness of a word that had been used too many times. The white dress, the tan line, the initials WA appearing once on a locked screen and disappearing into an explanation I had accepted because accepting it was easier than becoming the kind of man who checked. Ranger stopped at every mailbox like the neighborhood had been redesigned overnight and required inspection. Milo walked close to my left leg, looking up at me every few houses. Dogs know when something has shifted. They do not understand betrayal, but they understand pressure in a leash, silence in a person's breathing, the absence of normal weight in a room. The worst part was not the sex. I know people expect that to be the center of it, but it wasn't. The worst part was the future. Claire had been standing barefoot in the sand, letting another man put a ring on her hand. That was not a mistake. That was not an accident that got carried too far by momentum. That was architecture. She had been building a life that required me to be removed from it. And she had been doing it while still sleeping beside me, feeding our dogs, choosing tile, asking if I had paid the water bill. 20 minutes. When they were over, I turned around and walked home. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and searched for the Western Procurement Leadership Forum. Denver, September. Nothing. Not nothing in the casual way search engines sometimes fail you when you phrase something badly. Nothing in the structured way that tells you the thing you are looking for was never there. I checked the conference name in quotes. I checked it without quotes. I checked the Colorado Convention Center calendar for the entire month. I checked the hotel event pages near downtown Denver, the procurement trade publications, LinkedIn posts, sponsor listings, vendor newsletters, even the kind of industry recap blogs that publish blurry photos of breakout sessions nobody asked to attend. No Western Procurement Leadership Forum. There was a Western Procurement Roundtable in Phoenix the previous spring. There was a National Sourcing Leadership Summit in Chicago in October. There was a Denver Logistics Breakfast hosted by a software company, but it had taken place 6 months earlier and lasted 90 minutes. Claire had not been mistaken. She had not confused dates. She had invented a professional setting with enough boring specificity that I would not question it. That was when the video stopped being only betrayal and became something else. A beach proposal was emotional. A fake conference was operational. One was pain. The other was a system. Vivian Hale had been practicing family law in North Carolina for 24 years, and her office at 8 a.m. looked like a place designed for people who had not slept. The lights were already on. Coffee sat in a glass pot on a side table. A yellow legal pad was centered on her desk with a black pen placed exactly parallel to the top edge, as if emergencies were not interruptions there, but scheduled weather. Vivian was in her early 60s, with short gray hair, rectangular glasses, and the kind of calm that did not invite performance. She did not look shocked when I told her what had happened. She did not tilt her head with sympathy. She listened like a person who had spent decades learning that the worst days of people's lives still required clean chronology. I told her about the video. She asked how I received it, whether I saved the original file, whether I had the unknown number, whether I had taken screenshots, and whether Claire knew I had done any of that. I told her about the conference that did not exist. She wrote something down. I told her about the 77 missed calls and the messages. When I repeated, "It's not what it looks like," Vivian's pen stopped moving for half a second. "That phrase matters," she said. "People use it when they know the visible facts are bad, and they're trying to move the conversation into interpretation." I liked her immediately for that. Then she explained the law without dressing it up. North Carolina, she said, was still an at-fault divorce state in ways people tended to forget until fault became useful. Documented adultery could affect the structure of a case. Marital waste mattered if shared funds had been used for hotels, travel, gifts, meals, or anything supporting the affair. Alienation of affection was old, yes, but not decorative. It still had teeth under the right facts. The question, she said, tapping her pen once against the legal pad, is documentation. I need a private investigator, I said. You need the right one, she said. I have someone. Former Charlotte Mecklenburg detective. 19 years. Her name is Rachel Boone. Then Vivian leaned back slightly, and her voice changed in a way that made me pay closer attention. Do not touch Claire's phone. Do not log into accounts you don't already have legal access to. Do not move money. Do not empty anything. Do not threaten her. Do not contact him. Do not tell her what you are checking. I nodded. The advantage you have right now is the gap, she said. The gap between what Claire thinks you know and what you actually know. That gap is an asset. Protect it. I asked if the one-word text hurt anything. Vivian almost smiled. You sent smile, and then ignored 77 calls, she said. That tells me you can control yourself under pressure. No, Mr. Mercer. It does not hurt anything. She looked at me over her glasses. Are you sure you want to proceed? I thought about Claire barefoot in the sand. I've never been more sure. Claire came home the next evening with white tulips from Harris Teeter, still wrapped in plastic. That was how I knew she had stopped on the way from the airport and stood in front of the floral section, trying to choose the version of remorse that looked least desperate. Roses would have been too much. Daisies would have been too soft. Tulips were clean, controlled, almost tasteful. Claire had always been good at selecting the object that implied the emotion without requiring the emotion to arrive fully formed. Ranger and Milo lost their minds when she walked in. Ranger spun in a circle so hard his back legs slipped on the hardwood. Milo made the small high sound he only made when someone he loved came home after being gone too long. Claire crouched automatically, one hand on each dog, her face breaking open for them in a way that hurt more than I expected because it was real. Whatever else she had lied about, she loved the dogs. That made nothing easier. I was at the stove, making chicken rigatoni with a tomato sauce I had started before her Uber pulled up. Not because I wanted dinner with her, because I needed my hands doing something ordinary. She stood in the kitchen doorway with the tulips against her chest. Nathan, she said. Put them in water, I said. Or don't. I'm almost done. She blinked once. She had prepared for anger. I could see that. She had prepared for shouting, for questions thrown like objects, for me demanding names and dates and details while she cried through the version of the story she had rehearsed on the plane. What she had not prepared for was dinner. She found a vase under the sink, filled it, set the tulips on the counter beside the coffee maker. Then she sat at the table because I had not asked her to, and because not being asked made her unsure of the rules. I plated 2 servings, put one in front of her, sat across from her. Tell me, I said. She looked smaller than she had in the video. That was the first dishonest thought I had, because she was not smaller. She was exactly the same woman who had stood barefoot in the sand while another man put a ring on her hand. His name was Weston Aldridge. Wes. They had met 14 months earlier at an actual procurement conference in Atlanta, which I noted without writing it down because it aligned almost perfectly with the 5:45 a.m. workouts. He worked in hospitality development, Florida money, resort projects, investor dinners, the kind of man Claire could describe as complicated when what she meant was available in all the ways I was not supposed to know about. It started as nothing, she said. I let that sit there. Then it became something she didn't know how to stop. Then it became something she handled badly. Then it became something she was going to tell me after Denver, which was impressive considering Denver did not exist. Did he know about me? I asked. She closed her eyes. Yes. What did you tell him? That we were struggling. We weren't. I know. What else? That we were more like roommates. That I didn't know how to leave without hurting you. I took one bite of pasta because I wanted to know if I could. I could. When he proposed, I said, "Were you surprised?" She looked at the table. Not completely. That was the cleanest answer she gave me all night. She said she had ended it when my text came through. She said the proposal had scared her. She said seeing the word smile had made her understand what she was risking. She said she wanted to fix us. I listened. Not because I believed her, because every answer had a shape, timeline, admission, knowledge, intent, damage. When she finished, I said, "Okay." Then I cleared the plates. The next morning, I called Vivian and told her everything. While Claire had been sitting across from me at the kitchen table telling me what she thought was enough, Rachel Boone was already working. Vivian had forwarded her the original video the night before, along with the unknown number, the screenshots I had taken, Claire's claimed travel schedule, and the list of trips I could remember without opening a single shared account. Rachel was a former Charlotte Mecklenburg detective, 19 years on the job, the last 7 in private work that Vivian described as domestic and financial investigations, which I understood to mean the place where marriage and accounting finally stop pretending they are separate subjects. Rachel called me at 7:18 the next morning. "I know the beach," she said. No greeting, no soft entry, just the fact. She had spent most of the night pulling the video apart frame by frame. The watercolor, the shape of the shoreline, the height of the dunes behind the man filming, the kind of gull audible in the background, the white stucco railing visible for less than 2 seconds over Claire's left shoulder. She had compared the stills against resort images, public beach access points, weather data, and geotagged social posts from the same week. "Rosemary Beach," she said. 30A, Florida Panhandle, not Denver. I wrote it down even though I already knew I would never forget it. The man in the video was standing with his back to the camera, but Rachel had enlarged 3 frames where his wrist turned as he opened the ring box. The watch was a stainless steel Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, or a very good imitation. She said men who wore those on beaches tended to appear in other photographs. He did. Weston Aldridge, hospitality developer. Tampa address. Multiple resort projects along the Gulf. One recent investor dinner photographed at a restaurant less than 2 miles from Rosemary Beach. Rachel cross-referenced Claire's travel confirmations with the dates she had claimed to be in Denver. By noon, she had a hotel confirmation tied to our joint card. The Pearl Hotel, room 214. Check-in September 12th. Check-out September 15th. For nights. Ocean view. 2 adults. Rachel sent me the screenshot without commentary. She did not need commentary. Some documents arrive already saying everything they are ever going to say. By the end of that first week, Rachel Boone had turned 22 seconds of beach footage into a 31-page report. Vivian sent it to me with 1 sentence in the email body. "Read this somewhere you can sit still." I waited until after dinner. Though dinner was only toast, I burned and ate standing at the counter because the thought of sitting at the table where Claire had confessed felt temporarily ridiculous. Ranger lay near the back door. Milo had his chin on my foot, a habit he had developed over the last few days, like he had decided physical contact was now part of his job description. I opened the report. 18 hotel charges. 12 months. 7 cities. Rosemary Beach, Charleston, Asheville, Atlanta twice, Savannah, Nashville, a Dallas procurement summit that had actually happened, but for which Claire had arrived 2 days early and checked into a different hotel than the one listed on the company itinerary. Each charge sat there in the report with dates, amounts, vendor names, card numbers ending in the last 4 digits of our joint account, and notes from Rachel where the business explanation did not match the transaction. The Pearl Hotel, $1,842. Valet, $96. Oceanfront dining, $318. Jewelry boutique, $2,700. Upgrade fee, $420. It kept going. Not wildly. That was the part that made it worse. This was not one dramatic weekend that had blown through a credit card like a confession. It was controlled, managed, spread out carefully in the margins of a life she still came home to. A room here, a flight change there, a dinner coded as client entertainment, a resort charge placed near a real work trip so it could hide beside legitimacy. Rachel's final number was $62,000. $62,000 of marital money spent supporting a relationship Claire had described at my kitchen table as something she didn't know how to stop. I read the report once. Then I read it again with a pen and a legal pad, because rage was not going to help me, but chronology would. By midnight, the thing in front of me no longer felt like my marriage in any recognizable sense. It had dates, exhibits, vendors, totals, patterns, and exposure. So I stopped calling it a marriage. I started calling it a case. Vivian filed for legal separation on a Thursday. The process server found Claire at her office in South Park at 10:15 a.m. on Friday, outside a glass-walled conference room where she had been leading a client presentation about transportation visibility, which was a phrase I had heard her practice at our kitchen island 2 weeks earlier while wearing the ring I had given her. She was home by 10:52. I know the exact time because Vivian had told me to document everything that happened after service, and because I was on a call when Claire's car turned into the driveway hard enough for the tires to complain against the concrete. She came through the front door with the papers in her hand. Ranger ran to her first. Milo stayed beside my chair. "You filed without telling me," she said. Her voice had that strange, injured edge people use when they want to discuss procedure because the facts are unavailable to them. I muted my call. "You didn't tell me about Rosemary Beach," I said. She stopped. "Or Charleston," I added. "Or Asheville. Or the 2 Atlanta trips. Or Dallas, where the summit was real but the hotel wasn't." Her face changed by degrees, not all at once. First anger, then calculation, then the sharp, private recognition that I had not been sitting still for the last 2 weeks. I had been quiet, which she had apparently mistaken for waiting. "Who have you been talking to?" she asked. "Vivian Hale's contact information is in the papers." "Nathan, I'd recommend calling your attorney." I unmuted myself and went back to my call. Claire stood in the entryway for another few seconds. The papers trembled slightly in her hand. Ranger pressed his head against her thigh, confused by the fact that both of us were home and neither of us was behaving like home still existed in the same shape. Then she walked upstairs. I wrote down the time. Claire came back downstairs 17 minutes later. She had changed out of her work blazer and into a gray sweater, which told me she had already started trying to move the situation from public embarrassment into private damage control. Her phone was in her hand. She had been searching. "Vivian Hale," she said. I looked up from my laptop. "She's who you hired?" "Yes." Claire gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "She's a pit bull." "That's what I've heard." "No, Nathan, you don't understand. She doesn't negotiate like normal people. She strips cases down to bone." I closed the spreadsheet I had been pretending to read. "Then call someone who knows how to deal with her." Her jaw tightened. For the first time since she came home, I saw something close to fear underneath the anger. Not fear of me, fear of the process. Fear of paperwork and discovery and dates she could no longer smooth into something harmless. "This is going to be a war," she said. I nodded once. "Okay." That was all I gave her. She waited for more. I did not provide it. After she went back upstairs, I opened the locked notes file on my phone and added the time, the exact sentence, and the fact that she had searched Vivian before calling counsel. Vivian had told me to document everything. So I did. 2 days after Claire was served, Vivian called me at 7:06 p.m. I was in the garage, replacing the air filter in the HVAC unit because the house had reached the point in legal transition where every small mechanical task felt like proof that at least one system could still be maintained with the right part and 5 minutes of attention. "Are you sitting down?" Vivian asked. I wiped my hands on a rag. "I can be." "That would be best." I sat on the garage step with the phone against my ear while Ranger nosed at a cardboard box beside me. "A declaration arrived this afternoon," she said, "from Warren Aldrich." The name took a second to land. Wes's father. Yes, Tampa real estate attorney, 30 years in practice. Florida bar, active, no discipline history that I can see. Of course he was an attorney. Of course the man who had put a ring on my wife's finger had a father who knew how to put a story into legal shape before it cooled. Vivian summarized it first, then sent it to me while we were still on the phone. The declaration was polished, precise, careful in the way documents are careful when the person writing them understands exactly where exposure lives. Warren Aldridge stated, under his professional name and credentials, that his son Weston had entered the relationship with Claire in good faith, believing that Claire and I were living separate emotional lives inside a marriage that existed only on paper. He said Wes had been told, repeatedly, that I was aware of the situation, that I had chosen not to contest it, and that Claire and I had an informal understanding while we worked toward a private separation. He did not use the word affair. He used relationship. He did not use the word adultery. He used transition. He did not use the word wife. He used Claire. It was good work, in the ugliest possible sense. The declaration claimed any attempt to characterize Wes as a knowing participant in marital misconduct would be factually misleading. It stated that Wes had been deceived by Claire's description of our marriage and had believed himself to be pursuing a future with a woman whose husband had already stepped away in everything but paperwork. It did exactly what it was designed to do. It moved the weight off Wes. It pushed the moral center back onto Claire. It positioned him as another person misled by her, another casualty of her inability to be honest. And because Warren Aldridge had signed it under 30 years of professional reputation, it carried the tone of a man confident enough in his son's version of events to attach his own name to it. Vivian let me finish reading. Then she said, "It's a competent piece of strategy." I looked through the open garage door at the darkening driveway. "Is it true?" "That's not the question that matters first," she said. "The first question is whether they can prove it. The second question is whether we can disprove it." "And can we?" Vivian's voice stayed even. "Yes," she said, "but not yet." The next morning, Vivian told me what she had meant by not yet. We were on a secure call at 8:30. I was in my office with the blinds half closed, a cup of coffee going cold beside my keyboard, and a meeting in 40 minutes that I knew I would attend with my face arranged correctly, because that was apparently still something I could do. "Warren Aldridge doesn't know what we have," Vivian said. "What do we have?" 4 months of text messages between Claire and Wes. I did not speak for a moment. Vivian continued. "Rachel has a source who obtained them through proper channels. Everything we intend to use is admissible. I've reviewed enough to know Warren's declaration has a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that looks small until it's placed in the record beside a sworn statement." I looked at the wall across from my desk. There was a framed certificate there from a risk management association, something I had been proud of when I received it and had forgotten to notice for years afterward. Vivian said, "Let them keep their declaration. Let them build on it. If they want to stand on that version of events, we are not going to warn them the floor is weak." For the first time since the video, I felt something that was not grief or anger. Not satisfaction. Leverage. The weeks between service and the November deposition were the strangest of my life. Claire moved into a short-term rental in Ballantyne with furniture that came included and looked like it had been selected by an algorithm that understood comfort only as a category. She texted once to say the place smelled like new carpet and lemon cleaner. I did not respond directly. I forwarded it to Vivian, who replied, "Household logistics only. Keep it clean." So we became clean. That is the word I keep coming back to. Not kind, not friendly, not healed, clean. Every exchange had a purpose. Every purpose had a record. Who was picking up her remaining clothes? Who would handle the utilities? Which vet appointment Ranger needed? Whether Milo's medication refill had been ordered. Nothing said at the kitchen table anymore. Nothing half mentioned in the hallway while one of us brushed our teeth. Domestic life reduced to entries, timestamps, and attorney-approved sentences. The dog stayed with me by agreement and by gravity. Claire's rental allowed pets, technically, but she did not ask to take them. Maybe she knew what the answer would be. Maybe she could not stand the idea of Ranger looking for me at a strange door. Maybe I am giving her too much credit. Ranger slept on her side of the bed for 12 nights. I counted because I was counting everything then, not obsessively, or at least not in a way I could admit was obsessive. It was just easier to measure things than to feel them all at once. 12 nights with his back against the pillow Claire used to use, his golden head turned toward the bathroom door like he expected her to come out wearing moisturizer and one of my old t-shirts. On the 13th night, he moved to the middle. Milo had already claimed the foot of the bed like a small, suspicious judge. I looked at both of them under the weak light from the hallway and took it as a verdict. I worked full days. I attended meetings. I reviewed risk memos and spoke in complete sentences. I nodded at the right times. Nobody at the office knew unless they had to know, and almost no one had to know. At night, I built the timeline Vivian asked for. Travel receipts from the shared Dropbox. Screenshots of the fake Denver conference search. Credit card statements. Calendar entries. Flight confirmations. Photos Claire had sent me from trips that now showed hotel lamps, balcony railings, restaurant glassware, little background details I had never thought to examine because I had not known they were evidence. Memory became part of the work, too. The Thursday she came home late from client drinks and went straight to the shower. The weekend she said she was helping a colleague prepare for a pitch, and later I learned that colleague had been in Boston. The odd softness in her voice on phone calls she ended when I entered the room. I did not punish myself for missing it. That was a decision I made and remade every night. I had trusted my wife. Trust is not stupidity. It is only expensive when placed in the wrong hands. So I documented the cost. Vivian was building toward one exhibit. She did not tell me which one at first. That was partly strategy and partly, I think, mercy. There are details a client wants because wanting them feels like control, and there are details a client does not actually need until the room is ready for them. Let them get comfortable, she told me during a Friday call in October. With what? With their version. I was standing in the backyard while Milo investigated a pile of leaves with the seriousness of a bomb technician. Ranger lay on the porch, watching me through half-closed eyes. Warren Aldridge has put his professional name behind a story, Vivian said. Claire's attorney is going to build around that story. Wes believed you knew. Wes believed the marriage was functionally over. Wes believed he was not interfering with anything that still existed. And that's not true. No, she said. But people don't abandon a useful story just because it isn't true. They abandon it when the cost of keeping it becomes higher than the cost of letting it die. I looked at the kitchen window. The room behind it was half-lit, quiet. No Claire moving through it with her phone in one hand and a glass of water in the other. So what do I do? Nothing dramatic, Vivian said. You show up. You answer what you're asked. You let me introduce what they don't know exists. I had spent my career telling companies that preparation was not the opposite of crisis. It was the only reason crisis ever looked manageable from the outside. For the first time, I understood that personally. I trusted the preparation. The deposition was held in a conference room at Vivian's firm, not a courthouse. I had expected marble or flags or some visible signal that what happened there would matter. Instead, it was a long walnut table, 10 black chairs, 3 water carafes nobody touched, and a wall of frosted glass that turned everyone moving outside the room into shadows without faces. Vivian had told me that was normal. Most important moments don't announce themselves, she said while arranging her folders. That's why people underestimate them. I sat to her right with a legal pad in front of me and a pen I did not need. Claire sat across the table beside her attorney, Martin Fowler, a man in his late 50s with silver hair, a navy suit, and the smooth, composed manner of someone who had made a long career out of keeping other people's disasters from splashing onto his shoes. Claire looked rested in a way that felt constructed. Cream blouse. Small gold earrings. Hair pulled back. No wedding ring. Her hands were folded on the table, and I noticed the faint pale line where my ring had been. I did not look at it twice. At the far end of the table sat the court reporter with her machine, posture straight, expression neutral. She had the kind of professional invisibility that made me more aware, not less, that every word in the room was being caught. On the wall-mounted screen, Warren Aldridge appeared from Tampa wearing a dark suit and a burgundy tie. Behind him were built-in shelves, framed legal certificates, and one photograph of Wes standing beside him on a boat. Warren had arranged the background carefully. I recognized the instinct. Reputation is not just what you say. It is what you make visible behind you while you say it. The first hour was procedural. Martin Fowler raised objections to parts of Vivian's evidentiary record. Vivian answered each one cleanly, without irritation, as if objections were simply weather passing across a map she had already studied. Warren confirmed his credentials: Florida bar, 30 years, real estate law, active standing, no disciplinary history. He confirmed his relationship to Weston Aldridge. He confirmed that the declaration submitted under his name represented his understanding of the facts. His voice was precise and calm. He had prepared. I watched him on the screen and thought about what it takes for a father to put 30 years of professional credibility behind his son's version of another man's marriage. Then Vivian opened the blue folder in front of her. Vivian placed Exhibit D on the table without ceremony. No announcement, no dramatic pause, no phrase like "I'd like to enter this into evidence," though I knew from the way the court reporter's fingers shifted that the formal part was already happening around us. Vivian simply set the pages down, cleanly aligned them with the edge of the table, and slid copies to Martin Fowler. At the same time, her assistant entered the digital file into the record. By the time anyone looked up, it was already there. Permanent. Vivian adjusted her glasses and read from the first page. This is a text exchange between Weston Aldridge and Claire Mercer, dated January 18th at 3:41 p.m., for months after the relationship began. Claire's face did not move. Warren Aldridge leaned closer to his camera. Vivian read the messages in the same even voice she had used to discuss filing dates and account statements. Weston, does he actually know about us? She paused just long enough for the sentence to settle into the room. Claire, he suspects, but he won't do anything. You know how Nathan is. There was no sound except the court reporter's machine. Vivian continued. Weston, good. I just need to know we're protected. She set the page down. That was it. 11 words from Wes. A sentence and a half from Claire. Nothing explosive on its face. No confession written in blood. No villain monologue. Just the kind of ordinary, practical exchange people send when they believe the private record will stay private. But the room changed. I could feel it before I saw it. The air went flat and dense, the way it does right before a summer storm breaks over pavement. Martin Fowler's hand stopped on the page. Claire looked down at the table for 1 second too long. Warren Aldridge's face held, because men with 30 years of legal practice do not let their faces collapse on video calls, but something behind his eyes moved. Recalculation. His declaration had said Wes believed I knew and consented. It had said Wes believed the marriage was informally over. It had said he had been deceived by Claire into thinking there was no real marriage left to interfere with. But Wes had asked the question. Does he actually know about us? That question did not belong to a man who believed I had consented. It belonged to a man checking exposure. Claire had answered with my character as her shield. He suspects, but he won't do anything. You know how Nathan is. I understood then what version of me she had sold him. Not cruel, not dangerous, not even angry. Predictable, contained. A man who would absorb humiliation privately rather than make trouble publicly. A man useful as furniture in the background of her new life because she believed I would not move. And Wes had accepted that risk calculation. Good. I just need to know we're protected. Protected from what, if I had supposedly agreed? Vivian did not say that part out loud. She did not need to. The declaration was on one side of the record. Exhibit D was now on the other. Between them sat the space where their story had been. Martin Fowler asked for a recess at 10:47 a.m. He did it calmly, professionally, with the tone of a man requesting a procedural pause rather than a man whose client's position had just shifted under his hands. That was the thing about experienced attorneys. They did not show impact by making noise. They showed it by asking for time. Vivian did not object. Claire stood first. She did not look at me. Martin placed one hand lightly near her elbow without touching it. Guiding her toward the conference room door-like direction could still be provided if he moved quickly enough. They stepped into the hallway and disappeared behind the frosted glass as two blurred shapes. On the screen, Warren Aldridge remained seated. For 3 seconds, he did not move. Then he removed his glasses, folded them, and set them beside his keyboard. It was a small gesture, almost nothing, but it told me more than an outburst would have. He had understood. His declaration, signed under 30 years of professional credibility, now sat in the record beside his son's own words, proving the foundation of it was unstable. Vivian closed her folder and leaned back. He reviewed enough to feel confident, she said quietly. We reviewed everything. There was no triumph in her voice. That made it better. Triumph would have cheapened it. This was not a trap sprung for entertainment. It was preparation meeting arrogance at the exact point where arrogance had mistaken partial information for safety. Warren looked back toward the camera. Ms. Hale, he said, his voice lower than before, I would like to reserve the right to supplement my statement. Vivian's expression did not change. Of course, she said. The original remains part of the record. Another silence. That was the sentence that landed. When the recess ended at 11:22, Martin and Claire returned with different faces arranged to resemble the old ones. Martin was still polished, still steady, but the ease had left him. Claire sat down carefully, as if the chair might not hold. The room looked the same. It was not the same. One exhibit had changed the weight of every sentence still to come. We finished the deposition just after noon. Vivian was methodical until the end. She asked what needed to be asked, objected when she needed to object, and let silence do more work than I had known silence could do in a legal room. Martin Fowler recovered enough to perform competence, which I respected in the abstract. Warren Aldridge stayed on the screen, quieter now, his answers shorter, his face composed around the new fact that his own son's words had become part of the problem. Claire barely spoke unless she had to. When it was over, the court reporter began packing her machine. Vivian capped her pen. Martin gathered his documents into a leather folder with the practiced movements of a man trying to make departure look orderly. That was when Claire looked at me. Not quickly, not by accident. Her eyes found mine across the table, and for the first time since the video, there was no performance in them. No apology arranged for effect. No outrage. No careful woundedness. No version of herself trying to get ahead of the damage. Just recognition. She looked at me like someone who had finally understood the size of the thing she had broken and the fact that I had seen all of it. Not the version she had planned to confess. Not the version where she was confused and lonely and swept up in something bigger than her choices. All of it. The beach, the hotel rooms, the ring, the money, the story she had told Wes about me, the assumption that I would suspect and still do nothing. I held her gaze. I did not smile. I did not glare. I did not give her the satisfaction of visible anger or the comfort of visible grief. I just looked back at her with the steadiness I had been practicing since the afternoon. I typed one word, and put my phone face down. For 7 years, I had believed knowing Claire meant knowing what she would never do. I knew better now. She looked away first. The settlement took 6 weeks to reach and another 3 to finalize. I will not pretend those weeks were clean just because the leverage had shifted. Legal advantage is not the same thing as peace. There were drafts, counter-drafts, financial disclosures, revised schedules, and emails from Vivian that arrived with subject lines so plain they felt almost cruel. Proposed asset division. Waste claim response. Aldridge matter update. Claire's attorney did his job well. Martin Fowler was too experienced to let one exhibit make him sloppy. He pushed where he could push, softened where he had to soften, and tried to turn every hard fact into something negotiable. Vivian did not rush. That was one of the things I learned to respect most about her. She understood pressure, but she did not perform it. She let the numbers sit on the table until everyone in the room had to acknowledge their weight. The $62,000 mattered. Not symbolically, structurally. Hotel rooms, upgraded flights, resort charges, meals, jewelry, transportation, the entire financial scaffolding of a second life paid for with marital money. Vivian had told me in our first meeting that marital waste was not just a moral phrase in North Carolina. Under the right facts, it had arithmetic inside it. She had been right. The alienation of affection claim mattered, too. Not because I wanted to spend years suing Wes Aldridge for the privilege of staying emotionally attached to the worst season of my life, but because the claim had teeth, and everyone involved could feel them once Exhibit D existed beside Warren Aldridge's declaration. Wes's family did not pursue further legal involvement. Warren did not withdraw his declaration. He did not amend it in any meaningful way. Maybe pride stopped him. Maybe strategy. Maybe the professional instinct to stop adding paper once the paper has already become dangerous. Whatever the reason, it stayed there. His carefully written statement, signed under 30 years of legal reputation, remained in the record beside the text message that made it look less like truth and more like wishful architecture. Good. I just need to know we're protected. They had not been. The final settlement came through on a December afternoon while I was sitting in my truck outside a hardware store, staring at a row of Christmas wreaths hung near the entrance. Vivian called, told me it was signed, and then said nothing for a moment because she had learned by then that I did not always need words immediately. I watched people walk in and out carrying paint, extension cords, bags of salt for icy steps. Life continuing in its unreasonable way. When I finally spoke, all I said was, okay. And for the first time, the word did not feel like restraint. It felt like an ending. Vivian's office sent the closing letter in January. It arrived by email first, then by mail 3 days later on thick cream paper with her firm's name embossed at the top. Efficient to the end. The body of the letter was exactly what I expected. Final documents enclosed, settlement terms completed, remaining procedural items resolved. Call if anything changes. At the bottom, beneath her signature, Vivian had added one handwritten line. You were one of my better clients. The work was excellent. I stood in the kitchen for a while with the letter in my hand. Ranger was asleep by the back door. Milo had dragged one of my socks into the center of the room and placed his chin on it like evidence. The house was quiet in a way it had not been quiet before. Not empty, just mine. I kept the house. I kept the dogs. And in February, I repainted the kitchen blue-gray, the color Claire had once said made the room feel too cold. It took 2 coats and 1 Saturday. By evening, the walls had dried into something steady and clean. For 7 years, I had thought marriage meant waiting for consensus before changing the room. I was wrong. Sometimes survival starts with realizing you no longer need permission to live in your own house.